There is something about Georgia in the 1970s that people who lived through it cannot forget. The humid summer nights, the smell of barbecue drifting across neighborhoods, the way the state was transforming before everyone's eyes. And if someone grew up then, they know exactly what made that decade so unforgettable. This was a time when Georgia was becoming the face of the New South. Atlanta was rising as a major American city. A peanut farmer from Plains was heading to the White House. Southern rock was blasting from every car radio, and the state was navigating the complex aftermath of the Civil Rights era. This was the decade that gave us Jimmy Carter, the Allman Brothers Band, Atlanta's explosive growth, and a changing South that was learning to look forward. The old ways were fading, but Georgia was inventing what came next. Let's walk through what daily life actually felt like during that transformative decade. Some of this might bring back memories. Some of it reveals how much has changed. Let's step into that world. Homes in Georgia in the 1970s had a character all their own. Ranch-style houses dominated the suburbs, spreading out from Atlanta, Macon, Savannah, and Columbus. These long, low homes with brick facades and carports were affordable for working families. air conditioning was becoming standard, and it changed everything about Southern life. Before air conditioning was widespread, Georgia homes were designed around the heat. High ceilings, screened porches, ceiling fans spinning constantly. By the 1970s, window units hummed in bedrooms, and central air was the ultimate luxury. People could finally sleep through August nights without soaking their sheets. Inside those homes, the aesthetic matched the rest of America. Harvest gold appliances, avocado green refrigerators, and shag carpeting in burnt orange and brown. Wood paneling covered den walls. Brick fireplaces anchored living rooms even though they were rarely needed for heat. The front porch remained essential to Georgia life. Neighbors would sit outside in the evening once the brutal afternoon heat broke. Rocking chairs and porch swings were standard. Sweet tea was always available. Conversations happened across property lines. People knew their neighbors in ways that seem almost foreign now. Georgia summers were oppressive. Temperatures in the 90s with humidity that made the air feel thick. Kids ran through sprinklers and spent afternoons at community pools. Kudzu covered everything that stayed still too long, swallowing abandoned buildings and climbing telephone poles. The landscape was green and overgrown, wild in a way that felt distinctly Southern. Winters were mild compared to the rest of the country. A few inches of snow would shut down entire cities. Schools closed. Grocery stores ran out of bread and milk as people panicked over weather that northern states would barely notice. The car culture in Georgia centered on American-made vehicles. Pickup trucks were everywhere, essential for rural life. Chevrolets, Fords, and Pontiacs filled driveways. Muscle cars like the Camaro and Firebird were popular with younger drivers. These cars had no air conditioning, and summer driving meant rolling down windows and hoping for a breeze. Gas stations were full service. Attendants pumped gas, checked oil, and cleaned windshields. When the oil crisis hit in 1973, lines formed and prices jumped. Georgians who drove long distances on rural highways felt the pinch hard. Dirt roads were still common outside cities. Red Georgia clay would coat cars and stain anything it touched. After rain, those roads became nearly impassable, rutted and slick. Before we continue with the culture and changes that define Georgia in this era, if you are enjoying this look back at how people really lived and want to explore more decades and places, consider subscribing. There are so many more stories about how Americans built the life we know today. Music coming out of Georgia in the 1970s was defining Southern rock for the entire country. The Allman Brothers Band, based in Macon, created a sound that blended blues, rock, and country into something new. Their live album recorded at the Fillmore East became legendary. The tragic deaths of Duane Allman and Barry Oakley only added to their mystique. Atlanta's music scene was thriving. Clubs and honky-tonks featured live music every night. Country music remained dominant on radio stations across rural Georgia. Gospel music filled churches on Sunday mornings. Leonard Skinner, though from Florida, felt like Georgia's own. Sweet Home Alabama played constantly. even though it was about the neighboring state. The band represented a form of Southern pride that resonated deeply. The biggest story in Georgia during the 1970s was Jimmy Carter. The peanut farmer from Plains served as governor from 1971 to 1975, then shocked the nation by winning the presidency in 1976. For Georgians, having one of their own in the White House was a source of tremendous pride. Carter represented the New South. He was progressive on racial issues, declaring in his inaugural address as governor that the time of racial discrimination was over. This was remarkable for a Southern politician. Georgia was changing, and Carter embodied that change. Atlanta was transforming into a major American city. The population was booming. Corporate headquarters were relocating south. Hartsfield Airport was becoming one of the busiest in the country. The city hosted professional sports teams, the Braves in baseball, the Falcons in football, and the Hawks in basketball. Peachtree Street was the center of Atlanta's growth. New skyscrapers were rising. The Omni Complex opened in 1972, bringing a modern arena and hotel to downtown. Atlanta was shedding its image as a slow southern city and becoming a business hub. But Georgia was still navigating the legacy of segregation. Schools had integrated, but tensions remained. White flight to the suburbs was reshaping cities. Some communities resisted change, while others embraced it. The progress was real, but uneven. Food in Georgia was deeply rooted in tradition. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, and black-eyed peas were staples. Barbecue meant slow-smoked pork with a vinegar-based sauce in some regions and a tomato-based sauce in others. Arguments over barbecue styles were serious business. Waffle House was expanding across the state, becoming the place where everyone gathered after Friday night football games. Coca-Cola, headquartered in Atlanta, was a point of local pride. Asking for a Coke meant asking for any soft drink. Church was central to Georgia life. Baptist churches anchored communities. Sunday meant services in the morning, big family dinners afterward, and no shopping because everything was closed. Wednesday night prayer meetings were common. Faith shaped daily life in ways that extended far beyond the church building. Friday nights in the fall meant high school football. Entire towns would empty out to watch their teams play under the lights. College football on Saturdays was religion. Georgia Bulldogs fans bled red and black. Georgia Tech had its loyal following in Atlanta. The rivalry between them divided families. What defined Georgia in the 1970s was transformation. The state was becoming something new, while holding on to its traditions. Atlanta was rising as a modern city. A Georgia native reached the White House. The economy was diversifying beyond agriculture. The decade had its challenges. Racial tensions persisted. Rural poverty remained widespread. The economy struggled with inflation, like everywhere else. But there was also pride in being Georgian, in Southern hospitality, in communities that looked after each other. For those who lived in Georgia during the 1970s, it was a time of sweet tea on front porches, church on Sundays, and the sense that the South was finally getting its due respect. The heat was brutal, the pace was slower, and neighbors still knew each other's names. For those with memories of this remarkable era in the Peach State, there is always more history to explore.